I mean, I'm probably relating with a lot of you owner-operators in the sense that it was just around the clock. I was working, I was selling, I was kind of doing the books. I realized that I needed to understand and put processes into place in order for me to continue the growth. I just moved the mic, sorry. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the NS Builders Podcast. I'm going to give you the secret to setting up your standard operating procedures. But before I do that, I just want to talk about what that means for us as a company. The number one thing that we have learned over the course of now going on 7.5 years is that we need to systemize what we're doing. And starting the company when I was just myself, I was a carpenter. I started hiring, my cousin, my brother, family, friends, all of that, basically to help do what I was doing. But I was running the business. I was doing the accounting, quote unquote accounting, basically doing it at the end of the year, kicking it over to my tax accountant and him telling me that I owed a ton of money. I was doing the sales. I was looking at projects after hours. So when I wrapped up for the day, I'd go down and to another client's house, or maybe on the weekends. I mean, I'm probably relating with a lot of you owner-operators in the sense that it was just around the clock. I was working, I was selling, I was kind of doing the books, and around we went. And as I started growing, I realized that, I don't think I actually realized it. I think I was smacked in the face with it, but I realized that I needed to understand and put processes into place in order for me to continue the growth. And I know everyone talks about processes and how that's the secret to a business and all of that. And, it's, that's fun and games, but how, what's the technical side of it? How do I actually, jump in and actually start documenting this? And for us, as I started hiring people, I was hiring to replace what I was good at. So, in that case, I was a good carpenter and I was starting to hire carpenters. And I realized that hiring carpenters was easy because I was a carpenter and I knew what to look for. But I wasn't putting in any process in place. I was just saying, hey, I need this work done and I'm going to go do something else and I'm going to go sell. So there wasn't a process in place. I started hiring more and more carpenters, and it was, the same thing. Just go do this. There's no process. Just and I'll support as much as I can, and I'm going to go do this, run the business, do sales, and then getting better at the books at this point, and then starting to think about big picture in the company. It wasn't really until I hired Nicole, who is my accountant, that, we really started implementing processes. And processes for that part of the business, the accounting side, was wildly overwhelming. And, for me at the time, I hired Nicole. She works, as a third party. And basically she, audited what I was already doing, was auditing, what my books look like and how much work needed it and what my goals were and my growth and what I was looking for out of it, reporting, understanding where the business was. And it took a lot of, her team to do this. But the thing it took the most of was my time to implement and give the information to her so she could, track it and create processes around it. And that really bogged me down from other things in the business. I wasn't, I felt as though I was just overwhelmed with, hey, how do you do this? Where's this? Where's that? Where's this? How do I invoice? Where's this invoice? I need this receipt. But in the back of my mind, I realized how important that was. And this is also very similar to, we use Buildertrend as a project management software. It was very similar to that, where I had chosen to use Buildertrend when we started to grow because I thought that it was going to replace the need for a project manager or a superintendent. I could hire carpenters and then Buildertrend would magically run my project management with, little to no supervision. That was a pipe dream, and I ended up giving up on Buildertrend almost immediately. And we continued to grow. And at this point, this is when I started realizing I needed someone to run and manage projects, more of the not defined at the time, but project manager position. And that's when we thought about Buildertrend and we decided to implement that into our business. Now, here I am, I'm working with Nicole and her team and building processes around accounting, which is just overwhelming. let's fast forward a year and a half or more to today. I look back at all of that work and how it was worth it. I'm able to understand where my business is. From a financial standpoint, we meet on a regular basis. We're able to make, constructive decisions. We understand where money is and how we're paying people. We just have a really good understanding. Always room for improvement. I'm going to get to that because that's part of that secret. But let's talk about Build a Trend. Build a Trend was the same thing, is that it was this overwhelming feeling of, I need to implement this software. It's so powerful. I don't know, how am I going to have the time to learn this software? How am I going to then have time to teach this software? And then how am I going to have time to maintain this software? And for me, I really leaned on my team. And at the beginning, it was, we used it primarily for reporting on a daily activity. Prior to using it, we were basically taking photos and kind of sharing them in a shared folder. But we decided, hey, daily logs is a great thing. We decided to, use it for that. But we knew that there was an opportunity to, kind of expand on that. And this is when we started developing systems, and very primitive in this case of like, all right, how are we going to write an estimate? And this was, again, very much on myself, as people. Mike at the time, was carpenter, superintendent, rolling into a project manager. We were hiring more project managers, and these things were starting to become processes. But interestingly enough, we were all doing it differently. So Mike had his way of writing up, maybe a change order, and, maybe I had a different way or a different thought on it, and maybe one of my other project managers had a different thought. And we were developing systems individually. And, while we had this central location of accounting, we actually work out of Asana, which is like a project managing software, but it's more of kind of a task organization software or something like that. Not sponsored anyway, but that's how we work through the accounting side. Build Trend obviously is our project management software, who we work very closely with. We're partners with in many ways, and we were so organized on the accounting side because the accounting team was running the process and basically indicating how we were going to do things, and it was great. It was very structured and it was very organized. Build Trend, not as much. It was, we were all looking at the program and figuring out how to do things. And then, they offer coaching, and we realized that, hey, this is great. We can work with the coach. We were working with them individually. We were hiring people. Hey, I want you to spend the next, week working with our coach, walking through how to use this program. Brings us to today. I don't even know how many years I've been working with Build a Trend at this point. Today is day 2, the last day of our on-site training. Our on-site training, we did fly Build a Trend out, and we sat in a room, and I say we, my team, myself, my project managers, Ken, representing the millwork side of things, and some future hires. We sat in a room and we talked about every process that we intend to use. Now, what I'm getting at is this is kind of the quote-unquote secret, the clickbait, right? Let me pause for a moment. Everything that we've done has been, taking the process that we're doing right now and then refining it. How are we writing an invoice? All right, this is how we write an invoice. Let's refine that. And that looks good, but let's refine that again. And that's how we've done this for the last 7 years. What I chose to do here with this on-site training is let's kind of take all of that as a lesson learned, but let's look at this as an opportunity to look towards the future. And that's exactly what we did. We looked at, we are in a pivoting moment for our business. We're shifting our focus as to the type of projects, the type of architects, the type of architecture, like many things around that. We're shifting our focus into what we really want to be doing every single day. What we share as a vision for the company, what we share as visions individually. So we looked at that as that's our goal. So rather than taking a process on how to do something and then trying to get it to there, Let's look at that and work backwards. So in order for us to build that, how do we need to bill an invoice for that? How do we need to build a schedule for that? How do we need to document communication? How do we do RFIs for that? And looked at our target, where we're going, and work backwards. And of course, we're utilizing what we've learned in the past and what hasn't, especially things that haven't worked, but we're really looking at that and then building a process. Now, the big secret to all of this is you have to collaborate through this. And this is what I meant by having everyone in the room. Everyone's in the room. I'm probably the loudest in the room, but the point of that is I'm going to voice my opinion on how I think something should be done. But everyone in that room needs to agree with it. And not necessarily agree with what I'm saying, but the end result we all have to agree on. Because I might think that, tracking a time clock this way makes the most sense for me, but I don't realize that might make everyone else's job harder, or it makes the accounting harder, or you can't map that to our accounting software properly. All of those things. And I failed to mention, Nicole, my accountant, also flew in for this. So all parts of my business are sitting in this room, and we're walking through this really crucial. This is our software. Buildertrend is our project management software. It talks to our accounting department and our accounting team and our accounting software. We need to make sure that this process is cooking. This process is moving smoothly, that it's doing what it needs to do to make everything else successful. Because going back, if we are at a point where we're shifting our business model and going after different projects or bigger projects or more in-depth projects or more detailed projects, then we need to have our stuff figured out. And that was really why we chose to do this as a team, do this as a collaboration, and sit 2 really intensive days walking through every single process from the very beginning of a sale to the time I get an email saying, hey, we'd like you to build our house. What does that look like? How do we get them from there to pre-construction? What does pre-construction mean? Where does that document live? How do they sign it? And once it's in and they're a customer, how do we work through pre-construction? When does the estimate get uploaded to Buildertrend so we can then start and so it gets approved, and then we can start tracking against it once we go into construction? All of that, all the way to, now we understand what the estimate is. We're billing against it. How do you write a PO? How do you track a receipt that you go to Home Depot for? How does that cost attribute back to the estimate? How do we then take that cost and we bill the client at the end of the month? How does that client get to see these costs? How are we presenting it? How are they paying it? How are we then bringing that information back? Walking all the way through all of these things and everything that's intertwined with that, the way we track time clocks, bills, POs, vendors, subcontractors. How do we pay subcontractors? What questions are they going to have? Are they going to buy into the fact that they need to sign into Buildertrend to request payment? Okay, maybe they won't. If they won't, are they the right subcontractor for us? Are they willing to work with us? What are the challenges we're going to face? Literally everything. But at the end of the day, at the end of today, literally just an hour ago, we sat in a room and we collectively agreed that we made tremendous progress. Now it's about execution, right? It's about putting these things into place. And the team at Buildertrend, Brett, who flew out here, he's going to help us write these charts and these basically, I knew I was going to forget the word. Not bubble chart, not organizational chart. No, like, and Brett, who flew out here, he's going to take the time and basically map all this stuff out in a chart for us to understand how that process works. From the very start for each and every item that we just kind of glazed over. So at the end of the day, for us building these processes, building standard operating procedures, it really starts with getting your internal team on the same page. And from here, it's going to be getting our subcontractors on the same page. It's going to be getting our, obviously our clients are going to be coming to us for a certain reason. They're going to want to see certain information and making sure that we're delivering that stuff, accordingly. So at the end of the day, what do you got? Gantt chart? Bubble chart? No, it's not that. I forget. either way, it starts with getting the internal team on board. We have collectively agreed that these are the changes that need to be made. We can standardize these. We can create templates around them, thus taking off the redundant work of creating something from scratch every single time that we get a new project. And then from there, we can really, which will allow us to really focus on the product. And if you're hiring a builder, you need to understand that this is a really important thing. If working with someone that has processes in place and is eager to get these processes in place allows for more creativity on the back end, allows for the focus of the project manager, the owner, the superintendents to focus on the product rather than the monotonous and the repetitiveness of document control, communication control, and schedule control, all of that stuff. So the investment for us, speaking to two audiences here as other builders and potential clients, the benefit here in this investment is so we can then shift our focus back into being more creative, being more collaborative with our team and our architects, and building a better product. Guys, I always appreciate you listening. Let us know how we're doing in the comments below, and we'll talk next week.